The miracle of the floating axe. In the Bible, in the book of 2 Kings chapter 6, there is a fascinating story about the prophet Elisha and his miraculous intervention in the life of a group of prophets. This story is not only a demonstration of Elisha's faith and God's power, but it also has practical applications for our lives today. The story begins with a group of prophets who were under Elisha's guidance and mentorship. These prophets were likely young men who were being trained by Elisha to become future leaders and prophets in Israel. As part of their training, they were engaged in various activities, including building and construction projects. One day, while they were working on a construction project, one of the prophets accidentally dropped his axe head into the Jordan River. The axe head was made of iron, which was a valuable and expensive material at that time. Losing the axe head was not only a financial loss, but it also meant that the prophet would not be able to continue with his work. The prophet was distressed and cried out to Elisha for help. Elisha, being a compassionate and faith-filled leader, responded to the prophet's cry for help. He asked the prophet where the axe head had fallen into the water, and the prophet showed him the exact spot. Elisha then did something that seemed impossible and absurd. He cut a stick and threw it into the water at the exact spot where the axe head had fallen. To the amazement of the prophets, the axe head began to float to the surface of the water. The prophet was able to retrieve his axe head and continue with his work. This miracle is a powerful demonstration of God's power and Elisha's faith. It shows us that with God, nothing is impossible, and that He can intervene in our lives in unexpected and miraculous ways. There are 5 things we can learn from this story and ways we can apply them to our lives today. So, what can we learn from this story, and how can we apply it to our lives today? Here are a few lessons and applications. 1. Faith and trust. The story of the floating axe head teaches us about the importance of faith and trust in God. Elisha's faith and trust in God enabled him to perform a miracle that seemed impossible. In our lives, we need to cultivate faith and trust in God, especially when we are facing challenges and difficulties. The importance of faith and trust. The story of the floating axe head emphasizes the importance of faith and trust in God. Elisha's faith and trust in God enabled him to perform a miracle that seemed impossible. In our lives, we need to cultivate faith and trust in God, especially when we are facing challenges and difficulties. Faith and trust are essential components of the Christian life. They enable us to rely on God's power and provision rather than our own strength and abilities. When we have faith and trust in God, we can face challenges and difficulties with confidence and courage. The story of the floating axe head also reminds us that faith and trust are not just theoretical concepts, but practical realities. Elisha's faith and trust in God were demonstrated in his actions as he cut a stick and threw it into the water. In our lives, we need to demonstrate our faith and trust in God through our actions as we trust Him to provide for our needs and guide us through life's challenges. 2. Problem solving. The story also teaches us about creative problem solving. Elisha's solution to the problem of the lost axe head was unexpected and innovative. In our lives, we need to be open to new and creative solutions to the problems we face. The power of creative problem solving. The story of the floating axe head also teaches us about the power of creative problem solving. Elisha's solution to the problem of the lost axe head was unexpected and innovative. He cut a stick and threw it into the water, which seemed like an absurd solution to the problem. However, Elisha's creative solution worked, and the axe head began to float to the surface of the water. This story reminds us that creative problem solving can often lead to unexpected and innovative solutions. In our lives, we often face problems and challenges that seem insurmountable. We may feel like we have tried every solution and nothing seems to work, but the story of the floating axe head encourages us to think outside the box and to look for creative solutions to our problems. We can apply this principle to our lives by being open to new ideas and perspectives. We can ask for help and advice from others, and we can be willing to try new things. We can also cultivate a mindset of creativity and innovation by being curious and open to new experiences. Third, stewardship. The story highlights the importance of stewardship and responsibility. The prophet was responsible for the axe head, and he was distressed when he lost it. In our lives, we need to be responsible stewards of the resources and opportunities that God has given us. The importance of stewardship spans beyond the scope of our reasoning. The story of the floating axe head also highlights the importance of stewardship and responsibility. The prophet was responsible for the axe head, and he was distressed when he lost it. This story reminds us that we are responsible for the resources and opportunities that God has given us. In our lives, we have been given many resources and opportunities, including our time, talents, and possessions. We are responsible to use these resources wisely and to be good stewards of what God has given us. We can apply this principle to our lives by being mindful of how we use our resources. We can ask ourselves questions like, am I using my time wisely? Am I being a good steward of my finances? Am I using my talents and abilities to serve others? 4. Community and teamwork. The story also emphasizes the importance of community and teamwork. Elisha was part of a community of prophets, and he was able to help one of his colleagues in need. In our lives, we need to build strong relationships with others and work together to achieve our goals. There is power in community and teamwork. The story of the floating axe head also emphasizes the importance of community and teamwork. Elisha was part of a community of prophets, and he was able to help one of his colleagues in need. This story reminds us that we are not alone in our journey, and that we are part of a larger community of believers. In our lives, we need to cultivate strong relationships with others and work together to achieve our goals. We can apply this principle to our lives by being intentional about building relationships with others. We can join a community group or church, volunteer for a cause we care about, or simply reach out to a friend or neighbor. 5. Miracles and the supernatural. Finally, the story reminds us that God is a miraculous and supernatural God. He can intervene in our lives in unexpected and miraculous ways. In our lives, we need to be open to the supernatural and miraculous work of God. The numerous significance of miracles and the supernatural encounter. The story of the floating axe head reminds us that God is a miraculous and supernatural God. He can intervene in our lives in unexpected and miraculous ways. This story encourages us to be open to the supernatural and miraculous work of God in our lives. In our lives, we may face challenges and difficulties that seem insurmountable, but the story of the floating axe head reminds us that God is able to do the impossible. We can apply this principle to our lives by being open to the supernatural and miraculous work of God. We can pray for miracles, expect God to work in our lives, and trust in His power and provision. The story of the floating axe head is a powerful reminder of God's power, Elisha's faith, and the importance of stewardship, community, and creativity. As we reflect on this story, let us be encouraged to cultivate faith and trust in God, to be responsible stewards of our resources, and to be open to the supernatural and miraculous work of God in our lives. May we, like Elisha, be willing to trust God and take risks, even when the situation seems impossible. May we, like the prophet, be responsible and diligent in our work, and may we, like the community of prophets, support and encourage one another as we serve God. As we apply the lessons of this story to our lives, may we experience the miraculous and supernatural work of God in our midst. May we see the impossible become possible, and may we give glory to God for His power and goodness in our lives.